Welcome to Hide and Create, your online writing workshop.
The 6 hours of emotional torment.
I guess we're maybe semi-proud of that.
You know, you're going to disembody yourself. You need to leave your body in a safe place, but you go and, you'll project out someplace else. So that's kind of what I need to do.
Zombie mermaids, I should have thought of that. Good!
There you go, irony.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger.
Okay, we're going to cut that part out of the podcast.
Ignorance. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Welcome back to Hide and Create. This week's topic is Kobo Writing Life. And with us today is Mark Lefebvre from Kobo. Mark is the Director of Self-Publishing and Author Relations at Kobo. And he oversees Kobo Writing Life, which is probably of interest to a lot of our listeners. Our co-hosts are, as always, the fantastic Debbie Viguie, representing traditional authors, indie sensation Michael J. Sullivan, freelance editor Joshua Essoe, and I am Jordan Ellinger. So I thought we'd start by asking Mark to just kind of define Kobo for people, that are, I know that Kobo's making a big push in the States right now, and they're obviously the publisher to go with, the electronic publisher to go with in Canada, where I'm from. But if you're not familiar with Kobo, how would you introduce that platform?
Certainly. Well, the first thing I should let you know is that Kobo is an anagram for book. So
nice.
It's not a Japanese word. It is actually just rearranged letters.
Huh.
Kobo was born out of Canada's largest book retailer. The head of the tech department saw a vision years ago that ebooks would probably become popular and created a company called Short Covers, or a spin-off called Short Covers, because the thought was that everyone already owned a mobile device. So let's not build a reader. Let's build free applications that you can use on your, do you remember Blackberries? On your Blackberry, on your smartphone, and the thought was that people would be doing more reading on those mobile devices. That company eventually split off from Chapters Indigo, which is a large retailer in Canada. People in the U.S. might think of them as like a Barnes & Noble type company. And it became Kobo. Kobo's just about 5 years old now. And the customers of Kobo demanded that we make a reading device, a dedicated e-reading device. So that's when we started to manufacture actual e-ink readers, similar to the Kindle. So Kobo's mandate was always that you should be able to read any ebook at any time on any device. The mandate of the company was open, social, and collaborative. And because we were spun off of Canada's largest book retailer, what Kobo did is a very aggressive push into the global market. Whereas if you were with Kindle, you were guaranteed a spot in the U.S. market and potentially in the U.K. market. But Kobo went beyond that, and we very aggressively pushed our way into 190 different countries around the globe. And in about 20 different countries, partnered ourselves with leading retailers there. So in Canada, we were partnered with chaptersindigo.ca, which means Kobo's catalog is available on kobo.com, but also available through chapters.indigo.ca. So if you're a customer of that store, you have access to our entire catalog, and we've partnered with those retailers. In the United States, we originally partnered with Borders. Didn't work out so well for Borders, unfortunately. So, and Google had partnered with the independent booksellers, and the independent booksellers said, "Man, we don't want to play with you because we've got Google." And then Google kind of turned their back on that partnership, and we put our hands up and said, "We're still here if you want to play with us." And so, just a couple years ago, we came back into the U.S. through the American Bookseller Association, which are the independent bookstores across the U.S. In the UK, we're partnered with W.H. Smith and the Indies. In France, it's Fnac, and in Italy, it's Mondadori and Lefebvre. And there's so many different retailers in India and in South Africa and in Australia, New Zealand. And so one of the differentiating factors with Kobo is rather than compete with the leading retailer in that market, we've partnered with them. And when we created Kobo Writing Life as a way to remove the barriers for writers to get their works into Kobo's catalog. And by writers, I mean those from independent authors who are doing their own work to small publishers that just don't have an IT department and can't provide XML-based Onyx files and data feeds and have trouble with figuring out how to FTP information across the system. We created a system very similar to those who are probably already familiar with KDP without the select. Because we do believe that you should have your work available everywhere, and we're not trying to push for exclusivity. We know it's in every publisher and author's best interest to be available as broadly as possible, globally, and through as many retail markets as possible. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a summary of what Kobo is.
Yeah, I know that worldwide rights can often eclipse local rights. Isn't that right, Debbie and Michael?
Yeah, in numbers, I mean, you can get a really good domestic deal, but you can get multiple deals, overseas, which adds up. None of them are probably as big as your domestic, but they tend to add up over time.
Yeah, it depends on how many you can get overseas, because like Michael said, the U.S. numbers will be higher usually, but when you're starting to talk about, 15, 20 contracts in other countries, then that really does start to balance out.
Yeah, and I know that's something that often indie writers will struggle with is that maybe they'll just focus on the U.S. market and not have the knowledge to go worldwide. So before next question, before I go there, I wanted to gush. I have a Kobo eTouch. I've had one forever. I love it. It fits in my pocket. And I know that one thing that Kobo did that really sold me on the platform at the start was that they partnered with my local library, and I can now borrow books from the library directly onto my Kobo device, right? So it just magically appears, and then after 2 weeks, it magically disappears, right? So it's not like the library's making unlimited copies available. They still have a certain number of copies, and so they're not hurting writers by doing this, right? Libraries do buy these copies, and libraries can be an excellent source of, libraries are your best clients often as writers. So they're not hurting writers, but they're making your book available to people that normally wouldn't buy books. So you're getting wider read, you're having more of your books purchased, and I don't think that's something that Amazon does, at least not everywhere.
Amazon uses so Kobo uses EPUB, which is the industry standard for electronic books, and Amazon uses a slightly modified version of EPUB, the .mobi file, which is proprietary to Amazon. So the interesting thing about EPUB is the Sony Reader, the Nook, even iBooks to a certain extent pretty much use the EPUB standard, which is the same as Kobo. So if you purchase an EPUB file, and so long as the publisher or author has not selected DRM, Digital Rights Management, you can take that EPUB file and move it to read on a different device. So for example, if you bought a Nook, from Nook you bought an EPUB file that had no DRM on it, you could take that file and load it and read it on your Kobo, and vice versa. And the library is typically purchasing EPUB files from publishers to make available, and Kobo reads EPUB. So that's why that relationship with libraries is so easy, because it's a industry standard that we're following.
Great. Yeah, no, I mean, I love that feature. I get a lot of free books from my publishers, but when I'm looking for something to read, I definitely go to the library first. So could you talk a little bit specifically about Kobo Writing Life, the platform that you oversee?
Yeah, sure. So I had been running an espresso book machine, a print-on-demand machine at McMaster University, and was helping students save money by printing textbooks a lot cheaper, because I was getting the professors, they were writing them directly, and then rather than going to a big publisher, they were publishing their work directly through the bookstore, which cut out a lot of costs. And when we found that there were other universities around the world that wanted these books, the cost to print and ship the books to them was significant. And what I ended up doing was I contacted Kobo as a vendor, got myself set up as a vendor, and was able to translate these books into ebooks, and realized that suddenly, rather than just selling this book to my local community or shipping them, I was able to 24/7 sell digital copies, for a fraction of the price, and still make a decent amount of money doing nothing, just putting it in a catalog and sitting back and waiting for the checks to roll in. So shortly after that I learned that Kobo was looking to hire someone to basically help them create a self-publishing platform. And just a bit of a background on myself, I have been a writer for a long time. I actually self-published my first book back in 2004, back when none of the cool kids were doing it, and it was actually a taboo topic. So interestingly enough, I'd already been experienced using, Kindle Direct Publishing and print on demand, and I was familiar with the ins and outs of the industry, having been a bookseller for 30 years. So when Kobo was looking for someone, I really felt this was the perfect job for me, and they wanted somebody who both understood the business of selling books as well as what it's like to be an author, so that I could take a very author-centric approach. And basically, when we built the platform, Kobo Writing Life, I did it from my perspective as a writer. I said, well, what do I want in a platform as a writer? And then I spent a lot of time in the writer communities talking to people, finding out what they liked and didn't like about different systems, and then worked with the user experience team and the developers team to design what I think is probably one of the most beautiful and data-forward platforms available, because of a lot of authors love the fluid nature of publishing books through Kobo, and they particularly love the global map that shows you where in the 190 countries Kobo is available and where your books are selling. And what I love, one of my favorite things, is when authors share a screenshot of their map. I think Joanna Penn recently shared one on her blog last week and showed that she's selling in 50 different countries on Kobo. And you see the little blue dots begin to expand as your sales go up in different territories. That tickles me pink.
Yeah, I've seen those maps, and often there'll be like one little dot in like the middle of the Pacific or something. Like one of those
Hawaii,
little islands. Well, no, I mean you can tell Hawaii. Often the dot will be a little bit bigger, but it will be like one dot, and there's like one guy reading you on like Tonogo or something like that. Or like Denmark or Greenland or something like that. It is a kick knowing that you have a fan. The internet has made your book available in that kind of like random location.
Yeah, that somebody far, far away who has no idea who you are and isn't related to you actually found your book and bought it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to kind of throw open the floor. Does anybody have any questions for Mark?
I was just wondering, what kind of facilities do you have for like helping authors lay out their books in preparation for the EPUB? Do you have any mechanisms that can, like take a file and turn it into an EPUB easier than you might find, say, on Kindle?
We have a similar conversion system. We can convert from Word, OpenOffice, and Mobi, which is Amazon's proprietary format, into EPUB. Probably one of the cleanest conversions is Mobi to EPUB, because Mobi is so close to EPUB that all we're doing is we're taking out some of the Kindle specific stuff. The next cleanest conversion is coming from OpenOffice documents, and the dirtiest, ugliest conversion you'll ever find comes from Word, unfortunately, because
that's okay, because Office never use Word.
No, they never do, and it's so frustrating because Word is the most used platform, but unfortunately, automated conversion programs always get you about 90% of the way there, and there needs to be usually some little manual tweaking done after the conversion. There's so many hidden characters and things and junk, I will call it, for lack of a better term, hidden in a Microsoft file that when you convert from Microsoft, if you actually strip open the HTML, it is garbage. It is a complete mess. OpenOffice is way cleaner. But what we've done since we launched is we built in a WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get. So you could upload your Word document, do the conversion, and then crack open the text editor and go in and clean up those extra 10% that needs to be tidied and get rid of some of the extra junk. And that's a nice tool that authors like. Some authors have gone right into the WYSIWYG editor and manually created their EPUB file right there. That takes a lot more patience, but it can be done, particularly for shorter pieces. And you can do all the formatting and upload images and everything right from the tool.
I think there are other tools as well that authors can use to prepare their EPUBs before they go into Kobo as well. Like I think Sigil is a tool that they can use.
Yes, Sigil, Calibre, or Calibra, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I think Scrivener, most authors that I've talked to who've used Scrivener and exported EPUB from Scrivener have had no problems either.
Note from your editor, please call it Calibre.
All right, Calibre. I call it Calibre, but I've heard some of you folks in the U.S. calling it Calibra.
Really? Yeah. Well, I mean, that's more
because they're Americans.
Americans, is that it? Okay.
Well, it's a French pronunciation, so maybe they heard it first there, or somebody with an accent.
I still pronounce that retailer Target because it just makes me feel like I'm going to a high-end boutique.
Is there a recommendation engine or something that you have where you can recommend professionals to help them get to that last step if they're not able or willing to do that themselves? Or
in the Learning Center within Kobo Writing Life, we actually link to a couple trusted places. One of them is BiblioCrunch, which is they're run out of New York, and it's kind of like a place where professionals can list that they're available, and people can go look and you can bid on jobs. And then another company is AuthorWrite, which they're based out of the UK, and they offer various services for authors. We're looking at ramping that up in the new year, where we can really help line up the right professionals with the right asks, whether it's a different kind of editing that you need. Whether it's design for the interior of the book, whether it's design for the cover, whether you're looking for marketing, whether you're looking for a ghostwriter, like whatever it is that an author might be looking for.
I know that we were talking at Superstars this last winter about independent publishers using Kobo to help get their books out there. What would you say, Mark, is the right approach for a new indie author to try and get their books on the Kobo platform and to get some exposure through your company?
Sure. I mean, well, go to KoboWritingLife.com or Kobo.com/WritingLife, or go to KoboWritingLife.com. That's our blog where we do offer advice from professionals, whether they're cover designers or editors or other writers. It's a great place to get inspiration, and there is also a place to find professionals to help you. From there, you can link to Kobo.com/WritingLife to log into your dashboard. It's free. And so, assuming that you've already done everything you can to make it the best book possible, one of the things that's worked consistently well for authors at Kobo and doesn't take a lot of effort is the free first in series promo that we've done. We've gone from taking authors who've had no sales or very minimal sales at Kobo to increasing their unit sales. I mean, I've seen reports of authors saying my sales went up 500% after I just had this first free book promoted on our free ebooks page. Wow. Because when a new customer, and we're getting new customers all the time, the first thing a new customer does when somebody buys them an e-reading device or they download the free app is they go, all right, I'm going to check out this e-reading thing. Because let's be honest, e-reading is still a very small percentage of the reading public when you think about it. Estimates have it in different countries from anywhere from 5 to 25%. So that's still pretty minimal. There's a lot of outliers that are doing a lot of digital reading. So the first thing a person does is they say, I don't know if I'm going to like this digital reading. Let me find something either cheap or free. So what we're doing is we're pushing a curated list of free books to them that are good titles, that are decent looking, that are clean looking, that seem to be appealing to the target audiences by the genre that they're classified in. And for the most part, we're selecting those coming directly out of Kobo Writing Life because that's where we're seeing the most experimentation. The independent publishers and the smaller publishers tend to be more willing to experiment and say, well, you know what, why don't I just make this book perma-free? Because you can make your books permanently free on Kobo if you want. We don't have that 90-day exclusivity where you get your book free for 5 days or any of that other stuff. If you want to make it free, it's your book. You should be able to do that at any time. So that has worked really, really well for a lot of authors. We also have a program called Kobo Next. Again, we don't call it Indie Reads or a self-published Superstars or any of that. We basically just call it Kobo Next, and the mandate is discover your next great read from an author you may not know about. And we curate those out of the Kobo Writing Life catalog. And that gets included in a couple direct-to-customer emails. And it's also included as a banner on the ebooks page. And so that helps us help our indie authors get some more visibility. And we really like trying to rotate through as many great titles as we can, because here's the problem we have. There's way too much good stuff. There's way too many good titles. And it's really, really hard to include them all, because you're limited to about 200 titles that can be included in these features at any given time.
So I wanted to talk about both pricing and DRM, but I guess we'll start with DRM because I think pricing is going to be a much more involved topic. So how does DRM work? I know that you can set that option in Kobo Writing Life, but then is it exclusive to that device? Is there any way for people that own the book to move between devices? How does that work?
So let's pretend that a publisher has assigned DRM, like the restrictive DRM, to that title, and you've purchased it. It is synced in the cloud in your Kobo library, so whether you're reading it on your Kobo device, whether you're reading on your free iBooks or on iPad or iPhone or your BlackBerry or your Android device or your Mac or your PC, it's readable on all your devices where your Kobo account is set up. What you can't do in DRM is you can't go and take that EPUB and manually move it anywhere else. It's locked the same way that those library books are locked down. I'm going to share my personal opinion. This is not the opinion of Kobo. This is the opinion of Mark Leslie, the writer. DRM penalizes your paying customers, because I know through experience that people who steal will steal, and they will find a way to hack whatever DRM is in there. But adding DRM to a title, all that it really does is it frustrates and annoys the customers who are actually paying for your product, because if I bought this EPUB, I should be able to take it and put it on another device if I want to read it on my Nook, for example, or I want to open it up in iBooks. I should be able to do that. And so, if you select no DRM as an author published through Kobo Writing Life, when the customer goes to Kobo.com and looks at their library, they actually don't just see the option that they can, sync it to their device, but they see that they can actually download the EPUB file. And, there's huge debates in the author community. I'm curious to see what you guys think about DRM.
Sure. We do need to cover pricing, but do we want to have a couple of minutes to talk about DRM?
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I tend to agree with Mark for the most part. I actually have heard of authors who have purposely set up pirating on their books in order to raise awareness for that and actually increase sales for them. I'm not sure, but I thought it might have been the fellow who did The Alchemist was actually trying to get it released in Russia, and it wasn't doing very well. So he actually encouraged pirating, which turned out to actually increase the sales.
Wow, very interesting.
Wow.
I know that for the magazine that I'm launching, and I have run several other magazines when we've talked about this, almost all the content that is going to be in the actual magazine, which we're going to be selling, is going to be available for free on the internet, right? So you can subscribe to the magazine, and that's whatever, $2.99 or something. We have a pay what you want feature as well. But the idea behind that is that people that are going to sit on the computer and read the magazine religiously on the computer, and page through X number of pages on the computer are probably not going to buy the book anyways, right? If they're that concerned, so what we could get out of them is hopefully a little bit of promotion, right? So if they go on Amazon or go on a blog or go on Kobo or whatever and talk about our magazine, then at least we're getting something from them for the pleasure of reading our magazine. And then maybe somebody else who is willing to pay and is willing to support the market and authors, like word will get around to them from this person who's pirated the magazine or who's read it for free or whatever, and then they'll spend the money. So we want word to get out to paying.
Another thing that I did was at the beginning of the book Hollow World, I actually have a section that talks about piracy, and one of the things I said was, I'd appreciate it if you paid for it, but if you didn't and you read it and you liked it, buy another copy of the book for appreciation and give it to someone else.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's good.
Or review it or share it, because you post a link to the book on Facebook, right? And other people see it, and some of them are honest people and they'll buy it.
Yep. We want to get the word out to people that will pay for it, and if pirates, if they won't pay for it, so at least they can help us get the word to people who will. So.
I was so excited. I edited an anthology called Campus Chills years ago, and I remember doing a dance when I found it on BitTorrent. I was so excited that people wanted to steal it. I was like, right on, this is going to be a popular book now.
Yeah, I had that effect too. I wasn't selling that many, and all of a sudden, I think it was at the very same week that I noticed that I was getting all these torrents popping up on the torrent site, that my sales went crazy. So it's like, I don't know if one caused the other, if they just happen to happen at the same time.
Yeah, I think Cory Doctorow, he said that an author's greatest enemy isn't piracy, it's obscurity.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, you've reached a certain milestone when somebody has pirated your book. So unless there's something else to talk about with DRM, I wanted to move to pricing. Does anybody have any final thoughts on DRM?
No.
I have a segue.
Hit us with it.
Is it fun? Do you enjoy it?
It's awesome. I tool around down by the seashore in San Francisco. Having worked in academic bookselling, we were giving away digital versions of textbooks for free, and customers were buying them so long as the price was reasonable. So even when books are available for free, if the price is reasonable, people tend to be willing to pay for it. And this is talking about, the one part of the book industry where people feel the most ripped off. It's textbooks usually, because the prices are ridiculously high. But I found I could give away a book for free to 300 students and have a $20 version of that same book available for print, and I would still sell 300 copies of that. If it was $150, I'd probably sell 5. But that leads to the beautiful magic of pricing. Was that a decent segue?
Yeah,
Nicely done.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
So so Amazon is famous for wanting to be lowest, and if you set a price on your book and it's available for a lower price elsewhere, Amazon will just lower their price. They'll send you a terse email saying, we've discovered that your book is priced lower here, so here's the new price of your book. Does Kobo do any of that kind of stuff? Or
we do it in a gentler way. We send you a nice email and say, hey, we noticed, because we're Canadian, right? We say, we noticed your price is lower, and according to the contract you've signed with us, it can't be lower anywhere else. Could you please change it? If not, we're going to change it, okay? And we're only going to warn you a couple more times until you do it. And usually people are really nice about it and go, whoops, sorry, and they do it. Whereas Amazon sends the Autobots and a couple of thugs to your door, and I get terrified when I get that email from Amazon. It freaks me out, man. But all of the retailers, if you actually look at the contracts, all of the retailers stipulate that it can't be lower anywhere else, or else we have the right to automatically change it. And it's pretty standard across all of the major retailers. A couple things about price I should mention, since we're talking about that, is Amazon through KDP provides, if you price your book $2.99 to $9.99 US, they give you 70%, and then they drop that down to 35% if you go below that or above that. On Kobo, we go from $2.99 with no cap for 70%, and below $2.99 we give you 45%. And one of the reasons why we removed the cap at $9.99 is because we recognized that there were authors who were putting together omnibus editions, or digital box sets, or whatever you want to call them, where they may have 5 books that are each selling for $5.99, and they don't want to sell all 5 books for $10. They want to sell it for $12.99 or $15.99, which is still a steal compared to buying them separately. You'd have to pay $25, so it's still $10 cheaper. But they didn't want to feel like they were restricted and couldn't sell larger packages for more money because they would make less on Amazon. And that was through listening to authors like Kevin Anderson and Dean Wesley Smith and folks like that, who were not pricing all their novels at 99 cents, but were rather pricing them closer to the mid-range between what indie authors were doing and what the big six publishers were doing. So they were finding that there was a market somewhere in the middle for people who were willing to pay more money for quality writing. And there's this interesting flexibility that exists where you can charge $2.99 for a novel, but for God's sakes, it's a novel. You're looking at 8 to 16 hours of engagement, and if you're a slow reader like me, it could be 24 to 48 hours of really fun engagement. So, spending $5 or $6 or $7 for a digital book isn't necessarily a negative thing.
One of the things that I actually found was that when I sold my books for almost all my books were always out there for about $4.99 to $5.99. But what I noticed as an experiment, I dropped them down to was it $1.99 to see how they would sell, and even 99 cents. And at that level, I sold less. I wasn't making less money. I was actually selling less units.
You sold less at that price?
Yes, I did. And as soon as I brought them back up to the original price, I resumed my normal sales. And the reason for that, I suspect, is that at least I noticed that on Amazon that they have certain ways that people are looking in certain strata. They have things along the lines of, also bought. And the people who are looking for really cheap books will stay in that 99 cent to $1.99 range, and they don't actually look at the other ones. Whereas people who are looking at more traditional, like your traditional big five books in that area, those people are getting the same kind of thing. They're seeing also bought, and they're seeing the ones who are, I would be at the top of that or the bottom of that level, which would be $5.99. So those were where people were looking for my books, and they knew me there. They didn't know me in the 99 cent range. So when I dropped down there, they had no idea who the heck I was, and I wasn't popping up in their also bought list. So actually it's just like this weird strata that once you're in an area for a while, you build up a presence and you can actually be sold more frequently. But if you're in a higher level, you have to, get acclimated to that section.
That's interesting that you noticed that, because we did notice that the worst possible price for an ebook is $1.99 for a full-length novel. On Kobo, you're twice as likely to sell at 99 cents, and you're 4 times as likely to sell at $2.99. And then, of course, you've discovered that there are people who find you because they're shopping and they're looking normally at traditionally published titles, and they go, "Oh my God, this is a steal! For $6 I can get his novel." And
it's just depressing to find out that someone can buy a pack of gum for less or for more money than you would be writing a project that you worked to make this thing great, and you're hoping it's going to be this wonderful hopefully like week-long experience for someone. And that's the worst thing. You write this thing for a year and then you give it to someone. Yeah, I read that in an hour. You're like, are you kidding me?
So I want to know, as an author, just how user-friendly the interface is for making it work. Because I know when I am the traditionally published author, but I have done some of my own stuff, and it took me days of headbanging for Amazon, and Barnes & Noble was a little easier, and then the iBook one was impossible because I don't have a Mac, and when I found a friend who had a Mac, I nearly killed myself trying to make that thing happen. So I've had fans who've asked me when it's coming out on Kobo, and I'm like, I don't have time to learn another system. I don't have time to figure this out. So how user-friendly would you say you are compared to an author trying to publish on Kindle or Nook or the iBook?
So way friendlier than iBook.
Thank you.
Pretty like Nook, functional like Kindle.
Okay.
I honestly think, and this is based on feedback from authors who use all the platforms, they do adore our platform the best in terms of intuitive and easy to use. We have allowed authors to set up pre-orders from the moment Kobo allowed pre-orders, because we didn't have them at the beginning. We allow you to set up schedule price promos because people are using things like BookBub to market, this weekend my book is 99 cents for 3 days only and things like that. No, I think you'll have a relatively easy time. If you were able to publish to KDP and you were able to publish to Nook, you'll have no problem publishing to Kobo Writing Life. The hardest part you're going to have, Debbie, is setting up your bank account information for us to pay you. Because especially if you live in a major metropolitan center, because the API goes to Western Union. And I know, for example, if you're in Toronto is a major city in Canada, but Toronto has like many cities that have amalgamated into Toronto, like Etobicoke and Mississauga and things like that. And so depending on how the bank is listed, you may put in Mississauga, but it doesn't find your bank, and then you have to change it to Toronto. And so that will probably take you longer than the whole process of uploading your book, especially if you already have an EPUB or a Mobi file ready to go.
Okay, now that is really, really exciting to hear because, like I said, I've had fans asking, and I've just been so exhausted. I'm like, I can't learn a new one. But now I'm actually feeling optimistic, and I think that's what I'm going to do next week.
And then, of course, you have my email, so if you have any questions, just poke me and I'll help you out.
Sit there crying, Mark, I don't understand. No, it sounds like when you saying it has the functionality of Kindle and the ease of Nook, I'm like, you know what? I can get behind that. I'm very excited. And readers, my books will be on Kobo soon. Be patient.
And available in 190 countries soon to those Kobo readers around the world.
Yay!
On behalf of Kobo readers everywhere, thank you, Debbie.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
I think it's important also to point out that Kobo has been available since almost inception on Smashwords as well, right? So if you went through Smashwords, you could publish through Kobo and get your book into the Kobo store that way.
Yeah, you can. One downside, and I love Smashwords because I actually use Smashwords to get into iBooks because it's way easier, and Nook because I'm Canadian and they don't let us in for some strange reason.
I've run into that too.
How rude.
But the one challenge you may have is because you can control your pricing in 8 different territories and 8 different currencies. So if you're a Canadian, it'll default to Canadian currency for you, and you can modify, but you can manually adjust your U.S. price. When you go with Smashwords, you can only enter U.S. price. So a couple things will happen. It may take weeks before your book gets sent to us in a feed, and the pricing, you can't control the pricing. So if you want to specifically target the UK market at a lower price, which is something that we're seeing works better because the traditional publishers are pricing aggressively lower in the UK market. You may have Michael's book maybe $5.99 in the US and $6.99 in Canada because of the difference in dollars, and it may be $3.99 in the UK, just to be aggressive with those other titles that he's already in the same realm with. So that's one downside, and I'm not saying bad things because I adore Mark Coker and Smashwords and all the great things that they've done for indie authors, but I do know that there is some extra flexibility that you get, and you also can see your sales live, in 15 minutes rather than wait a month or two to find out what's going on. It's almost like, hey, I'm traditionally published and I got to wait 6 months to find out how my book's doing. Right.
And someone else is going to take part of the money. Yeah.
That'll make authors not write. They'll just sit there refreshing.
I know. Every 15 minutes, that's awesome.
What are my sales? What are my sales?
That's pretty much the game that all indie authors play, isn't it?
Yeah, we should have a button that flashes and says, "Shouldn't you be writing? You've been on the dashboard for 20 minutes now."
I swear, the 2 days after I do a self-published book like that, that is all I'm doing is, how many more have sold? How many more have sold? I get nothing else done. It's ridiculous.
Has Mark ever considered offering maybe some sort of self-help group? Sort of like an Alcoholic Anonymous to try and beat people off?
Yeah, we noticed you've been on the dashboard 6 hours straight. You really should go talk to your family.
That's awesome.
All right. Is there anything else that we wanted to approach with Mark while we're here? All right, time to move on to final thoughts. We will start with Joshua.
Mark, I wanted to know if you had any particular story that comes to mind where an author really succeeded on Kobo, and I would love you to share that with us.
I'm actually in the midst of doing some research to find authors who've really succeeded on Kobo, and there's a lot of successful authors on Kobo, but what I'm trying to find is authors who were successful on Kobo but not as successful anywhere else. And I know there are Steve Vernon, for some reason. He's a Canadian horror writer from Halifax. He is selling like hotcakes on Kobo, but he hasn't caught on Kindle or iBooks. He does okay there, but his sales are far superior on Kobo. And I'm trying to figure out why. Why? What is it about him and his audience that appeals more to Kobo's customers than other people's customers? And I'm trying to figure that out so I can help other authors be successful.
Yeah, that was the follow-up.
Great. Michael?
Final thoughts, just, I find it fantastic to find a platform that is so independent that allows you to set your price the way you want it, allows it to go free when you like it to, allows you to run your own promotions, and the fact that it's open about its file sharing platform so that they're not too constrictive in all of these areas. I mean, that really appeals tremendously to, I think, the independent writers, because that's really why they're independent to begin with. So they want to be able to have control, and it sounds like Kobo is really doing a great job in making it possible for writers to have that control. So wonderful.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that.
Debbie?
Yeah, I have to admit, I was coming into this podcast going, I'm going to probably be half asleep through it because I don't know anything about Kobo and I was not really interested. Shame on me. And
it's too early.
Yeah.
Don't forget about that part.
Exactly. We're recording earlier than we usually do. But I have to say, everything I've been hearing, I'm really sad now I didn't go with Kobo first, because it sounds like I would have had a more positive experience with the self-publishing aspects going with Kobo. So I'm very excited now to get online and to get my books on the platform.
That's awesome. Debbie, can I do a pop quiz for you to make sure that you weren't sleeping at the beginning of the podcast?
Oh, crap.
Where does the word Kobo come from?
Look, it's an anagram of book. It's not a Japanese word.
You win the prize.
Woohoo!
All right, you get to have a career, Debbie.
Yay! I always wanted one of those.
Listeners will be having Mark back every week and determining who gets the new career.
Yeah, so I don't know. My final thoughts are just going to be that I love my Kobo. I'm an ambassador to Kobo, not just because I'm Canadian, but my eTouch device, I love it. It has wireless connection, fits my pocket, all those kind of good things. So thank you very much for coming on the show, Mark. We really appreciate you. We might have you on for follow-up episodes because it seems like there's a lot of interest. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Kobo loves you too, right?
I feel so special now.
That should be on the next shirt.
Yeah.
Thanks
so much, guys. It was an honor to hang out with you guys.
This has been another episode of Hide and Create. The show is produced by me, Jordan Ellinger. The site is edited by Joshua Essoe, and my co-hosts have been Debbie Viguie and Michael J. Sullivan. That music that you're listening to was written by Jason Donnelly. We can be reached at writingpodcastonline.com, where you can ask us questions or suggest topics for future shows. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking us on Facebook, reviewing us on iTunes, or subscribing to the Hide and Create YouTube channel. Please stay tuned for future episodes, but for now, go hide and create something.